Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. And I'm not kidding about you, and that's not a proud statement. Tonight, we got both of the guys in. We got Mac and Steve, and thank you both for coming. I really appreciate your continued effort in this presenting something that makes sense in reality out of an ancient story that's been very confused by practitioners. And I think that's the situation. And Mac, you had an idea for tonight's show. And would you take the floor, please, and introduce it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Pleasure. Good to see you guys. So the idea the question that I had tonight was pertaining to a subject that Richard has touched upon and probably delved into in a video that I haven't seen yet before. So it's always the case, though. So I've had to get over the embarrassment of asking him questions that he's covered before. It just doesn't matter. It's a question I have, so I'm asking, and it's specifically about the difference and the distinction between the characters of Satan and Lucifer in the text. And of course, when we say text, we mean the broader text than the Bible, but the Bible is a good sort of focal point for that exploration. And so specifically, Richard has said that they're distinct entities, that Satan is more of a sort of a transcendent entity, not in a magical way, but in the same way that God is, but in a different way, in that it has no relationship to humanity in a meaningful way. And so there are entities, I believe, that have a meaningful relationship with Satan, and those are the demons that are spoken of in the Bible. And I've just gathered this from incidental comments that's Richard's made along the way of deeper conversations, kind of tangential to this topic, but it always catches my ear. And when you were your conversation earlier this week with Chaos, was you specifically brought up that it was obvious from the text that Satan and Lucifer are two different entities, which upon immediate reflection is true. I mean, it is true, although it isn't considered true by classical Christianity. That's one of these like slap you in the face kind of realities about the Bible, and I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into it. And so, while we were developing this idea, you asked me to bring up some specific texts that may not be clear about the distinction between the two entities. And in my opinion, Revelation 3:9 is the most striking example of an ambiguous text. But then there's also really interesting sort of apparently anomalous references to some kind of demonic deity in Matthew 4:3 and Matthew 12:24. That's the temptation of Christ, and then when Beelzebub is mentioned in 12:24, which any high school English student knows means Lord of the Flies. So there's an interesting kind of
that's what the buzz is.
Yeah.
Great terrible joke. Great terrible joke.
Yes, it's really awful. I'm if I had any shame, I'd be ashamed of myself.
Fortunately for us, zebras don't suffer from that emotion.
No, that's quite right.
You were saying?
Yes.
Basically, it boils down to, this is an interesting topic to me, and it appears to be kind of a critical topic. And I just like more clarity on the whole thing. So I hope
Steve,
that's
do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I remember we talked about this issue before, about what Satan might be, and you mentioned that they could. I mean, you, Richard, mentioned that they seem to occur when they talk of the beasts of the field. And I'm trying to remember now. because that had special meaning. Um, it wasn't beasts of the field necessarily as cattle. Am I right there, Richard? I'm having trouble remembering.
Yeah, peace and respect, rebuke and reprove. Thanks for stopping by. Yes, the beast of the field, within context, has two meanings: either wild animals on this earth or the zodiac. One of those two.
Oh, okay.
But
but the zodiac
if
includes
there's
things that aren't beasts, surely.
yes, that's true. But still, all in all, they are beasts on a field.
Sure.
Field
Field of
meaning a
stars.
plain or flat place. You know.
Okay.
And thanks for subscribing. Apparently, I appreciate that, rebuke. Yes, so I think the easy delineation is seeing when the beasts of the field are actively doing something or when they're passive. When they're passive, majoritively, not conclusively. You still have to consider context. Peace and respect. It's skinny. Majoritively, if they're passive in their behaviors, it's actually talking about the zodiac. If they're aggressive in the behaviors, it's talking about wild animals. For instance, and this was another proposed idea, jawbone of an ass, and the story of Samson. Samson goes out into the wilderness and kills a lion with his bare hands. That's a passive lion. And you'll also notice that Jesus is of the tribe of Judah and or the lion. That's what kills a lion with his bare hands means. With his very physical existence and no weapons, kills a lion. You see, something like that. Okay. I feel like you didn't quite wrap that up, or maybe I missed something, Steve.
No, you explained it pretty well. It's coming back to me. But
Okay.
Mac, you mentioned some passages you had in mind.
Well, I rattled off a few referring to something demonic or something satanic, possibly Lucifer, possibly Satan. And I guess I was looking for clarity there, but I guess more broadly, I would just like to sort of hear Richard's cosmology on these entities and where he derives those from the texts. I did claim in the email sort of half tongue-in-cheek that we could do a whole show on Revelation 3:9. But I think we could do a whole show on any verse in Revelation, so it's not really that facetious. So
yeah, it'd be easy enough. Just pick anything from Revelation. You could do an hour on it, easy.
Honestly, yeah.
True story.
But it's a good place to start because it specifically mentions Satan and those associated with Satan, who are apparently claiming that they're something other than those associated with Satan. This is startling. This is also, unfortunately, used to apologize for hate in common era. You know, this is an apology for anti-Semitism, and I come across that a lot in like conspiracy forums and things like that. That this is demonstrating that the Jews are, synonymous with Satan, or are, modern day Jews are the synagogue of Satan. It's disgusting and obviously problematic. I don't think it's a common reading of this, but it's so it leads you to try to identify who these people are in the modern era, and especially if you're an apocalyptic Christian, you try to figure out who the synagogue of Satan is. And the old easy targets boil up at that
I think it's IKEA, clearly, and the Jews, Swedes.
You can tell because everything's chipboard.
Exactly.
That's right.
Sorry, I accuse IKEA of being secretly evil. And,
wait, you mean there's some chance they're not?
They may have a secret about it.
Well,
No.
well now I'm not sure either way. That's how diabolical the whole thing is.
They're good. They're good. It's hard to figure them out which way they're going. Okay, so first I'll review what I've said in the past in kind of a short synopsis,
Okay.
so that people can understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay. No evil thing is allowed to enter into heaven. That's a standard rule. If Lucifer had become Satan, he couldn't become good and re-enter heaven. That would be like kind of making fun of God, if you will. Okay. And for him to become evil and maintain evil and go into heaven is an absolute impossibility. That doesn't logically make sense in an overall reading frame. If he was evil at the onset of the Garden of Eden, and that predates when men began to multiply and cover the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them in chapter 6 of Genesis, and there were watchers sent down from heaven by approval on mission from God, apparently, to watch the people, and then they messed up. Then when they left heaven, they were good, and they were in heaven. Don't forget that. So they were in the habitation of God, uppercase heaven. They can't be the same being. And that's not even to mention that in the book of Revelation, an angel speaking in the name of God calls Satan that old devil. Like, whoa. Something as old as, say, an archangel or some major angel who's allowed to speak for God calls Satan old? Consider that for just a moment.
Yeah.
And what would that mean
if
I call someone else old, I mean older than me?
Right.
Yeah. Of course, do we have a timeline for when the rebellion led by Satan happened? I don't think we do, right?
There is no rebellion led by Satan as far as I can discern. There's a rebellion led by Lucifer as far as I can understand. He says so in no uncertain terms.
Okay, well, how about that rebellion then?
Okay, so that's, let's see, could be wrong about the book, Isaiah. I believe I will become as God, as the Most High. I pretty much saying I'm going to be a usurper.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people understand that that's referring back to chapter 6 of Genesis and the rebellion and the fallen and the watchers. Not everyone calls them watchers. That's an Enochian term, an Enoch term, watchers.
Oh, okay.
But the Bible does refer directly to Enoch and the occurrence that he describes in great depth very shortly in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis.
It's Isaiah 14:14.
There you
says,
go.
I will ascend above the top of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High.
I can't believe I got the right book. That's about the first time that's happened.
Yeah, you killed it.
Well done.
I'm horrible at that. Thank you. I guess I've heard it enough times. Okay, so there's a logical problem saying that Lucifer is Satan. It doesn't make sense that an angel would call another angel ancient or old. And if you look at the word old right there, it means really ancient, not a little bit older than me or just my senior in chronology. It means ancient. So I think there's no denying those things. And then when I take into consideration the expansive story of Joseph and how he came to be and his position, and the story of Moses and how Moses came to be and his position, that where Pharaoh represents Satan and cannot represent Lucifer, and clarity also given in the story of Herod and wiping out the infant children below the age of 3, that all of this is great depth And I think scholars say, well, that's all basically the same story anyway. And I'm willing to agree with them. Not that I knew they said that before I read it and saw that it was the same story, but I agree with them. That Satan and his kind predate Homo sapien sapien. That we are a product of their experimentation in trying to make the perfect slave. And, it's easy to sin and miss the mark. I'll put it that way. It's easy to overshoot your goal in a situation like that. If you're doing genetic experimentation, to get something smarter than you wanted would be something you'd expect to happen eventually.
How did we get to genetic experimentation on humans?
I was asked if Satan was our kind.
Oh, okay.
And if Lucifer was our kind. Lucifer was our kind. And got full of himself and believed a lie. And if you think about the logic of a lie being accepted by someone in heaven who's some archangel or any kind of angel, it would explain why there would be no forgiveness, because knowing the truth, they deserve no forgiveness. That would make sense. That if they were in the optimum situation, then there can be nothing better for their kind than that optimum premium, which we right now call heaven. And I can't tell if they call it heaven or not, but it's the idea that their ascended state is as good as it can be for a Homo sapien sapien. It can't be better. But you'll notice that he said, I will become the Most High, as the Most High.
Right.
And the claim of the Most High is a claim of blood lineage. So to become your own the Most High, you'd have to start a new blood lineage that is different from the other one. So that's what he goes and does, and gets some 200 of his higher angels to agree to it. So a third of his crew agree to it. Christians think that's a third of the entirety of the crew of heaven, but the story actually reads it's a third of his crew. So 200, 1/3, 600 total angels he had charge of to be watchers, and it names them in Enoch, and puts him as the lead, and the name Lucifer by a different language, Azazel. It's the same being. Different name, but same being.
I thought Azazel was a different angel in heaven, but
Was what?
I would, but I don't know where I got that impression from.
Well, the microphone cut out, and I missed the key word. Was what in heaven?
That Azazel was a different angel in heaven, but I don't know where I got that impression from, so I can't back it up.
Yeah, the problem with that is it could be a Christian claim that's not of the actual languages, and they may have done it for convenience sake. So,
don't our Jewish friends have books about angels that includes information not in the Bible?
Oh, absolutely, and they're very adamant about keeping it from the Christians and from the public because they're the chosen people. Just ask them.
Richard was mentioning the Book of Enoch, which isn't just honored by at least ancient adherents to the Jewish faith, but also this one sect of Christianity that's extant in Ethiopia, no less. Really strange. Like they're the only Christian sect that still considers the Book of Enoch canonical, and it describes in detail these things, these angels.
And the Pope signed off on that edition of their Bible for those people. Just FYI.
That's
he has to sign off on that. They're Catholics.
Oh,
I
interesting.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So totally approved as a book of the Bible. It's just not canonical everywhere, but it is considered canon by the Roman Catholic Church, which is hard to find an older Christian church than that, that's still in existence. There might be one, can't tell, but I can't find one. No one else seems to be able to find one either. Um, it's skinny in the side chat. I read the Bible many times, and I think the Garden of Eden is a replay of a story played out by multiple gods, multiple Edens. Yes, that is, I would agree with you. People all over the earth were told the truth a very long time ago, and the Bible is not original in any way. It's the truth, but it's not original. Okay, so on to this verse at Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. I don't know how Christians take this. Some Christians think they're going to rule over angels. To me, this is evidently talking about the Christ and his rule, and that he is the one that's loved here, and they will bow down before him and worship. And that would not be an average claim that I think Christians can justify in and of themselves. As to the synagogue of Satan, I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't want to hear if they're Christians. So hold on to your hats. There were multiple religions at the time in the ancient Near East when the Old Testament was compiled, and people were aware of it. Look up Mars Hill and Paul, and you'll find the Bible was aware, but they never name any of the religions. In fact, there's only two classifications of people in the Bible: Jew and Gentile, and that's all there is. In fact, every time they use the word nation, it would be better translated, instead of just some foreign nation that's not Jew. Actually, the word is goy, meaning a non-believer. So if you're not of the nation, you are a non-believer. If you're not of the Jews, you are a non-believer. And that's the only distinction. And what it actually means is believer, non-believer. So to say that they are Jews is to say that they are believers. And that's consistent within the Bible. So bad news, Christians. He's not talking about just Jews. He's calling you also the synagogue of Satan.
Who is speaking in Revelation 3:9?
An angel speaking for God. In fact, the main top angel is reciting to John. And by his costuming and who it says he appears to be is one like unto the Son of Man and or Jesus.
Well, when he says, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet.
Right. It's Jesus talking.
Yeah.
And whose feet is Jesus's feet? That's right.
Well, it shouldn't it be my feet, not thy feet?
No, it shouldn't.
All
because
right.
he's promising someone else. Peace and respect, Marty. See, paying attention to things like you just noticed, Steve, is why I said this is an earth, not the earth. Because every batch of God's children needs their hero. They will get their own Christ, which is how you can have Christ saying to Christ, I'm going to force them to worship you. No problem.
Well, I've always found the book of Revelations weird and disturbing.
Well, I think that would probably be because of maybe some accidentally adopted presuppositions, really.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget that it makes perfect sense.
You got a bot.
If anyone can block that. Do I have any?
I'm a mod. How do I?
Would you please?
I just put him in timeout. Now try and block him.
All right.
Yeah, if you would, please. We don't really need that.
Okay, delete it.
I mean, I'm not ashamed of human sexuality. I'm glad we have it. There'd be no humans without that, and it's beautiful. But I don't like exploitation of sexuality.
Here.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, thanks, Marty.
And hide user.
Okay.
On chat.
Okay, so back to the topic at hand. What you just noticed there, Steve, is evident and obvious that if you have Christ talking and then he says, I'm going to make them worship you, there's only one to be worshiped in this book, which means I'm going to make you as God. And there's just no avoiding it. So the Christian brain has a tendency to like skip over things that you just noticed. So congratulations on your lack of presuppositions. Peace and respect, Moon Medi.
Okay.
But I want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't have a comment. Please keep going.
Okay. So like the Bible says several times, all these new moons and new celebrations and feasts and sacrifices, I never asked for them. That's a Bible line. After all the kill a bull and don't rip apart the turtle doves and all that. Because the topic is not killing animals. It's been explained that way to us, and it's been practiced that way by the Jews. True, but it's evidently not the topic. Whereas if you take them to be astrological symbols, then all of it makes good sense and involves spilling no blood of animals for magic rituals. It's just not about that. Thoughts on that, guys?
Well, what is it about when you say you take an animal to the temple and you have it sacrificed?
Okay, so the altar always has four corners.
Okay.
Do you recognize the phrase four corners?
For four corners of the earth?
Right, meaning what?
Meaning, well, so the altar represents the earth.
Right. That's why an altar has to be made of earth. And that's why it has four corners on it, the four cardinal directions, east, north, south, and west. That's why it has to have four horns, those cardinal directions. This is all astrological. There is no sacrifice that doesn't involve a sign of the zodiac. Go look. A goat, a sheep, a bull, a man. All of them.
What about the animals mentioned in Leviticus, in the cleanliness laws? Is that also astrological?
You'd have to. I want to do it always within context and not make too much of an overarching statement. You know.
That's fair.
I mean, I want to as much as possible. The cleanliness laws, as far as I can discern, are rules for an army in things they should and should not touch.
Right.
Because it's either A, not their job, or B, they could get sick from touching dead humans and stuff.
I'll try and take care of this bot.
Thank you, sir. Okay. So the overarching question, and I think the real thing I want to concentrate on in this episode, excuse me, I hiccuped, is who is Satan?
Seems like Satan's in the chat.
Well, sexuality is not Satan, but exploitation of it is, my opinion. But
interruption and annoyance.
Well, let's just move on, and we'll let people take care of that as they can. I'm not going to worry about it too much.
Right on.
It's not like if you do a search, you're not going to find something.
Exactly.
Okay, so it happens to be in the chat. Fine. It could be 11 years old and find porn. But anyway, if you want it. Okay, so if I said that Satan did things like falsely accused God and claimed to be to us something that he is not, and considers himself to be a god, and in fact is a god to his kind, and wants to be in charge and feels like he has a righteous claim. All of those things are prevalent throughout the Bible, and no one would really bulk too much on too much of what I just said. Okay? But there's some things within the Bible that I think do a very good job of identifying Satan and describing his personality type and how he handles things and how he looks at things in great definition. And it goes right over the head of your average Christian preacher, I'm afraid. For instance, if I said something a little bit more experimental or controversial, like I might say something like, God would never perform ritual magic, whereas Satan might. Okay? And God would never ask someone he loves, like a prophet, to hurt themselves or do something to defile themselves, making them less of a prophet. Or perhaps if I said God spoke to a prophet and the prophet was so scared they never did prophesy. Or how about if I said God asked this prophet to eat bread cooked over human dung? Little bells should go off. What? Your God did what? To who is his own prophet? This is the book of Ezekiel. The book of Ezekiel is one of the older and longer books. And there are 50 total occurrences of the phrase Son of Man in the Bible. Now, Christians recognize Son of Man as being a pet name from God for Jesus.
That's right. Yeah.
30 times it appears in the book of Ezekiel. The one calling himself God calls Ezekiel Son of Man. Every chapter, without fail. Is Ezekiel Jesus?
It was once explained to me, and I can't remember from who, that Son of Man was an expression used in Jesus's time, at least, for guy, like this guy over here, this Son of Man, so on and so forth. But
do you know why
Christians?
Do you know why Christians claim that, though?
I don't know why.
It's because of the Ezekiel problem. It's because of the Ezekiel problem they say this. Oh, it must just mean like, hey, dude. While they recognize that every other time it's used, they never call one of the apostles, hey, dude.
That's
Not
true.
one time. In fact, it's only Ezekiel and Christ that are called Son of Man, ever. No one else is ever called that. Even if someone has great favor. John the Baptist, not hey dude. Not one time. So I'd like to go over something with you guys. This is, let me go back up a couple steps here. This is Ezekiel 1:3. The word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi. Okay? I'd like to show you what some of these words mean. Lord, actually Jehovah, and word actually was promised, like spoken word. Christians aren't going to like this very much, I'm afraid. Going all the way back into the etymology of the word. Ava, and you can hear Jehovah in it. To covet, to desire, to be desirous, to long or lust for. Okay?
Wow.
That might be good, might not.
Yeah.
The derivative
Sorry,
of that.
this is part of the root word for Yahweh?
Yes, sir. Christians don't talk about it, but this is what it is. Hava. Properly to mean to breathe in the sense of existent. The one who exists. They'll quote back that far for you. They'll go all the way back to existent. To be or become, come to pass. Copular or auxiliary. Beacon, accomplished, committed. Okay? So, actually could go either way. All right? The existing one, Jehovah. There's a complete usage, right?
Mm.
This means eternal or existing. All right. Came to Ezekiel. You already know the word God there, 410. Ezekiel means to seize or be seized, to be strong. This is the same as to be bound or attached to something or someone. To be obstinate and stubborn. All right? So they interpret that God will strengthen, and that's correct. God will strengthen. That's what it means. And that's all well and good, and it sounds benevolent until you come to who he is the son of. And the etymology of Buzi. Buz. And here it's just a name. We have to dig back further because they keep talking about names when that's not the important part. You'll forgive me how far back this goes. To despise, contemn, utterly, in emphasis, to despise, hold in contempt, hold as insignificant, to despise, show despite toward, to contemn, to despise utterly. And it just keeps going like that. Contempt, despise, disrespect, contempt, shamed.
Springing from evil.
To be contempt.
Well, in a sense,
One of
Ezekiel
contention.
would have been sprung from evil then.
That's
because
right.
his father was evil. But,
that's right.
But does that mean Ezekiel is evil?
If you as I read it, I'm not gonna project onto you. As I read it, he is innocent at first.
Okay.
But he is sprung of evil.
Eat this scroll.
Yeah, eat the scroll is borrowed from other parts of the Bible, but this God makes him literally eat paper. Whereas in the other places it's figurative. Okay, so if you want to know who the adversary is, read Ezekiel. Has him shave his beard, part it into 3 parts, and perform a magic ritual, burning, cutting with a knife, and casting it to the wind as a sign against an evil nation. And it all sounds very Christian-y, by the way. It's very persecuting. It's very aggressive. It's very accusatory. It involves blood magic and other forms of ritualistic magic in the book of Ezekiel. And are they the synagogue of Satan? Kind of hard to argue with.
Are they deceived?
They're innocent. They're not. It's not their fault. This is why my people perish for lack of understanding. This is why extending grace to the ignorant. I was talking to Ace Theo this morning. Check out his channel if you don't know who that is. Ace Theo. He's mostly a reader, and he doesn't talk much about what he thinks about it, and that's probably better. And he's a fan of Paul, okay, and that's fine. Paul, having been a Christ, having all authority, Paul is one to respect, no doubt, and is evidently the preacher to the preacher of uncircumcision, to the non-Jew, that is, of the lost tribe, of the lost sheep of Israel, the non-Jew. Obviously, the Jew would not be lost, in that mindset, Jew meaning believing.
Right.
Especially in that time when they've seen and come to believe. At least majoritively, that will be true. What was I saying? Ace Theo conversation. Oh, yeah. So he said grace, 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 because he's always talking about grace because he's talking about Paul. And he wanted to troubleshoot me a little bit. He says, why do you say peace and respect instead of grace? I said, because grace is for the ignorant. This is why the fallen received no grace. They knew the truth. There is no forgiveness for those who are perfectly knowledgeable. Why would there be? Flip side of the same coin, grace is perfectly just and appropriate in the face of the ignorant. And why would God not extend it to someone he knows is ignorant? So I'll wish peace and respect, because grace, to assume that you need it, is to declare you ignorant. Now that may be true, but I'm not going to go around saying it. Thanks for posting that. Appreciate it, Mac.
Yeah,
okay, so as soon as you look at Yahweh in Ezekiel in the possibility of him not necessarily being goodly, but only being very ancient and existing, and considering that an high angel, the last Christ, announces in the book of Revelation that is an old dragon. And what the hell does that mean? Then yes, he's a Yahweh. Or not a Yahweh, he's a Jehovah. That's true. But is he to be respected? Well, if you'll ask him, you'll get a different opinion than you'll get from me.
Interesting.
So you can have a really thorough study of Satan and exactly how he feels about it, and how he tries to imitate God, and how he has his angels trying to imitate the actual angels, and why they wear fake wings that are machines. And I mean, it really justifies all of it, including what he does to his prophet.
This is all in Ezekiel?
Yeah, Ezekiel is told to perform ritual magic, to eat food cooked over human dung, to eat only that and drink water.
Right.
When Ezekiel complains, the one calling himself God relents of his request and says, cook it over cow dung. He's told to lay on his side for, it was either 200 or 300, too many days that a human could survive it.
Sure.
And then flip over on the other side and then survive lying on the ground that long as again on your opposite side. In fact, Ezekiel is called one of the major prophets because he spends about, in movie time, how they can express in a movie a longer amount of time than is actually on the screen.
Sure.
Sure.
And your brain will calculate that and say, okay, that was 5 days, or that was 20 minutes, or you can kind of tell by the way they do it.
Yeah, like a montage or something.
They do it in several different ways, but yeah, you can tell by how far things have moved, how far time has passed. Ezekiel spends like 30 hours of FaceTime with the one calling himself God in its heaven where there are abominations of humans. whereas the rest of the Bible says no abominations in heaven.
Right.
Well, it's a direct contradiction. And no man has seen the face of God and lived. And 30 hours-ish.
Huh. Man, I got to read Ezekiel.
Well, it certainly explains why Southern Baptist preachers slam their fist down on Ezekiel, telling people that God is pissed and disappointed. Well, that God is pissed and is disappointed. And irate, in fact.
Hmm.
And seeking retribution, by the way, just so you know.
Is this the same as the jealous one?
That's a good question.
Thanks.
Okay, I think the reference jealous shows up only just a few times. And I looked into the word jealous, and there's good reason why it's spelled very much like the word zealous. It has the same root idea and meaning. So you could say, you could substitute the word zealous instead of the word jealous there, and it would actually work a little bit better in our modern language.
Okay.
If I have a righteous claim to someone and I say that I love them, and I say that they say that they love me, and I have zeal for them and I am jealous of them in that way, not in a childlike
way.
The way we look at jealous today is kind of the wrong idea.
I see.
I think when they say, well, your God is jealous, and that's a human emotion, and that's petty, and it says love is not jealous. Well, when it says love is not jealous, that's the way that we use jealous. Whereas when it says God is jealous, that's the way they use the word jealous. So,
okay.
I think it's not talking about infantile, temper tantrums and such.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Thoughts, you guys?
What do you think, Steve?
Well, I'm kind of overwhelmed here. I don't know what to think of all this. I have trouble following as we move from one idea to the next.
Okay.
So, not to be... So I don't really offer criticism of this, especially when you don't understand something, you don't criticize it. That's how I feel. But it means that I'm not making a significant contribution tonight.
Well, here's another idea. How about if you provide the questions that would help your brain sort it out?
Sorry, I heard your voice went robot on me. Can you ask that again? Say that again.
What say you ask some questions that would help you?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Well, if we are, for example, if God is, if we examine the word jealous?
Sure.
If God is jealous, is the word defined differently in these resources?
All right. Exodus 20, Richard, verse 5. You got it jealous there.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I am already sharing screen. I wasn't certain. Okay, so it's kana. And of course, if it has a root, I'm going to go all the way to the root of it. Causatively, to make or be jealous, and even in a bad sense, jealous or envious, envious, to be moved to, provoke to jealousy. There you go. There's the root of it.
Strange that they use envy, and so they don't really make the distinction between envy and jealousy.
Yeah, they don't.
Okay. Because I, as a grammar Nazi, I like pointing that out whenever I get the chance. But
Right.
I don't know.
the
What's the difference? Enlighten me.
oh, okay. Well, suppose you see another man looking at your wife, you would jealously interject and put yourself between them. You might get angry about it, at this guy looking at your wife. You jealously protect what is yours. But in the case of envy, some guy is driving a nice car and you wish it was yours and you're kind of angry that he has it and you don't. That's envy.
All right, I see. I see.
You might be angry at the guy for checking out your woman, but you're not going to be envious of him doing it.
Right, right. Jealousy has to do
You get to look at her all the time.
right.
Mm.
Jealousy has to do with what's within my sphere. Envy has
Yeah.
to do with outside of that sphere. I got you. All right.
So if we try to include all those the idea of envy and jealousy as one idea to our language, and this is part of the problem of translation right here. We don't really have an equivalent term. So how do you combine envy and jealousy together? Well, it's emotional. It's about a feeling of a righteous claim. It's about your emotional states concerning this situation. It's something like that.
Of course, and technically, people today use the word jealous for both meanings. They almost never use the word envy.
Right. So that's why I'm saying this is more like the idea of zeal, more than necessarily, like throwing a childish fit. Because I mean, it's not jealous like I'm afraid you're leaving me. It's jealous like I truly do love you.
Well, God doesn't hesitate to punish those Jews when they flirt with other gods or don't obey the laws. He's that's part of the Samson story that we mentioned earlier.
Actually, since I think all of this is talking about end times, he does wait for a really long time. Thus, divine hiddenness and that challenge is because he's been waiting. It's funny to me. I've heard this challenge given to Christians several times, and the answer is usually a bunch of bullshit. They'll say, well, why has God not performed any miracles recently?
So
And
what have you
Christians
done
have
for
a
me
long
lately?
apologetic for that. What's that?
The "what have you done for me lately" argument.
Right.
I just, for me as an atheist, of course, these questions don't mean anything. Of course, he hasn't done anything lately.
Right.
If you're a non-being, you're not going to do anything either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what have you done for me lately, a la Janet Jackson? That's about the size of it. And the Christians have a long apologetic for this, but the apologetic, when you start thinking about it critically, it doesn't really work.
Well, Christian apologetics almost always is very unsatisfying, and it only works for people who already believe, and which means it's not serving its purpose. It's not winning people to the faith. It's not defending anything.
That's true. That is, it don't work, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, it makes me kind of sad actually to hear them to hear apologetics.
It reinforces people, like you noticed. It reinforces people's beliefs. Their current beliefs. That's its function, and it does serve that function.
So in that sense, it is defending the faith, and so that you don't lose ground.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. Yeah, that's true. It shores up the believers. The way converts happen is almost always, at least from what I've seen, through emotional pleas or finding people who are in very vulnerable places who will respond really strongly to community being offered to them, and so those people will go along with almost anything. that's presented to them if it's in the context of community. So that's the way converts mostly happen. But that's also that's not very reliable way to convert people. So that's why Christianity, at least in the United States, is losing members all of the time, because there isn't really an effective way to convert unbelievers to believers. It's much easier to go the opposite direction, and to make the argument in the opposite direction. So there's a real crisis in the church right now because of that. There's a lot of people freaking out too, and I think that might be, along with the broader platform on the internet of exposure, partly to explain why there seems to be a rise in extremism in all kinds of religious expression. And so we have these very extreme versions of Christianity that are becoming very visible, for instance, and extreme versions of Islam that are very visible. Those are all a result, I think, of this. Geez, this love face is so persistent. It's so
well, she's on a mission. She's got to take her clothes off.
Without,
she's going to
strip without clothing. Strip. She's going to strip.
It's bad
without
English.
clothing.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm not sure even how you would strip without clothing.
I mean, what are you stripping?
Oh,
Skin,
hey, Krishna, thank you for stepping up there. Thank you, Krishna.
Oh, is Krishna in the chat?
Yeah,
doing,
he deleted those the latest love face messages. Online strips without clothing. So maybe she's stripping by wearing a barrel and taking off the slats. Because
technically that's clothing, I think. I don't know.
Stripping varnish off of a coffee table.
Oh yeah.
There you go. That's possible. Stripping old paint off of a car.
Yeah.
Sure.
Rust removal, that's stripping.
It's like an episode of This Old House, only, with sex.
I might have to watch that later.
Only probably
the best episode of Bob Vila to the rescue.
Bob Vila used to drive me nuts. He would call things they weren't called.
Oh, really?
So even when he was live on the air, I was sitting there going, "Bull crap! That's not the name of that tool. I know what that is."
That's great.
Of course, my wife got tired of hearing it.
Sure.
Show, but I was always just like, "Wait a minute, that's wrong. Why'd they let him say that wrong?" Then I found out later when he lost the show, like everybody knew he was full of crap. But he was a good face,
hilarious.
and
I didn't know that.
People on the show knew he was full of crap.
That's great.
But he's really good at sounding authoritarian, or authoritative.
Yeah.
Also, he had a very sort of gentle, friendly way of speaking.
That's right.
That I think have a lot of appeal.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. All right, so we're far enough away from the Bible now. Can we go back to it, or
I want to
wrapping up the show, or what are we doing, guys?
I do want to probe a little bit more specifically. So, if you go to the Wikipedia page about Satan, it says that there's an equivalency between Satan and Lucifer. Would you say that Lucifer is somebody who became a servant of Satan, a worshiper of Satan, like switch sides, sort of? Is Lucifer a human type who is now? I guess my real question is: are humans capable of being on this side of this ancient, evil entity? Can we really?
There's got to be. In literature, there's something called an admission of shame. And that's where the author says, "My bad, and I screwed up." Mm-hmm. Lucifer is an admission of shame. Um, so it's not only speaking to the human side in the possibility of error in heaven. It's not only speaking to that. I just wanted to point that out before I directly. So,
Okay.
from what I can tell, and I can point out specific reasons, the Watchers are imprisoned in jail, so to speak, in heaven right now, awaiting the completion of. They already know what the sentencing is, but the execution of the sentencing, which by the way is execution, that they will be put into the pit with Satan and his kind. And rocks will fall on their heads, and lava flow will cover it, and they'll be sealed and can't get out. And that will be their physical death. They will die in the lake of fire.
That sounds like the punishment for the Titans out of Greek mythology.
That's right.
Well, yes, that's correct. Not that I think these stories are different stories, but Michael, the king over the bottomless pit, assists them into the pit and then seals it. And then, as the oceans are removed and the crust will collapse, they are killed. Which you can imagine the worst place you can be is in a pit in the ground. It doesn't get worse than that. We could bicker over whether or not the angels directly killed them. And we could talk about the morality of respect of life and autonomy and consciousness and things like that. And yeah, that's really pushing the line. To force them or allow them to go into a pit in the ground for the completion of their sentence, or for the destruction of them and rendering them incapable for 1,000 years in the case of Satan and his crew, is really riding that line of, did you kill them? But apparently permissible. What's that?
The word Watchers, I'm trying to remember, and I can't, but if I remember the story, the rebellion of the angels led by Lucifer,
yes,
that there was a portion of angels who decided to wait it out and weren't for either side. Are those the Watchers?
The Watchers were Watchers of men, which is the overarching story, not a subsection.
Okay. So they're not the same. The
Watchers and Lucifer and his crew?
No, you see, they didn't join Satan, but they didn't support God either. They didn't fight Satan. They sort of sat on the sidelines, wondering.
What are they called?
I haven't heard of this.
Well,
it's extra biblical, but
it might be, yeah.
No, it's definitely extra biblical. But could you expound on the story a little bit?
Well, when God's forces are fighting Lucifer's, there are some angels who have chosen to sit on the sidelines, and
yes,
after the forces of light win, God deals with those angels. I can't remember what he does with them though, but
I'd say invites them into his house, because either that is talking about those who live in heaven who do not call him God, they aren't part of the battle, or it's talking about us as future angels. Either way is fine. Nothing wrong going on there. And yes, I believe that in end times there will be some percentage of people sitting back going, I don't know, I think I'll just wait this out for a while.
Yes.
Like a lot of atheists and a lot of traditional believers will be exactly in that position. I don't know which way this is going. Like, I can't tell who's who here.
By the way, Richard, something interesting. You've had an influence on me. When I was reading the passage about Samson, there was a part of it that really reminded me of the story of Christ. Because at one point...
What was that?
Well, there's the people of Judah who are subject to the Philistines.
Yes.
they are told to arrest Samson, and
Uh-huh.
Samson says, "Do you promise not to slay me, but
Yep.
instead just turn me over to the Philistines?" And they say yes.
That's
And
right.
if Samson is a Christ figure, well, he was turned over to the Romans by his own people as well.
I see that I have not wasted every word.
But there you go. If it's okay, I'm losing the thread here, so I'm going to sign off.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate you, Steve.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Good
Have
night
a
to
great
you
night,
both.
sir.
Good night, Steve. Thank you.
Hey, keep it real. Good night.
Yes. In,
Good
in
night.
fact, and I doubt we're going to make a whole show of it. It'd be too short anyway. Let's just go ahead and at the other suggestion of Samson, because we spoke about this a little bit before, which is why he was looking into that and why he realized that, and it's shown him too.
Mm-hmm.
Where it reads in the English, jawbone of an ass. It's actually cheek and the soft of the cheek, the muscular part, not the bone. Although you can use that to refer to the jaw. Okay. And the word ass there means red like a slime pit, and refers to like distaste and being uncomfortable and things like that.
Huh.
Okay. And the reason that became ass is because in that area of the world, a lot of asses have reddish hair.
Okay.
Just because of breeding. Okay. But it's talking about being objectionable in your jaw. And we still use a like expression the same way. That guy's an ass. But when we say that someone's an ass, we don't mean that they bray exactly. And we don't mean that they're shaped like or look like an ass. We mean the thoughts in their head and the words that come out of their mouth is ass-like. Okay. So to say that someone slayed 1,000 with the jawbone of an ass is to say that they used a jaw in an objectionable way, and people were slain by it after the fact. What's that?
People were convinced, or
precisely.
Right.
He convinced them, even though they thought he was a fool when he said it. So they objected to something about his words, but later became convinced.
Gotcha.
He didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
But he was thought a fool for sure.
Right. He would have been a fool if he tried to attack that many people with such a measly weapon.
You know they had arrows and spears back then?
Right.
Did you know that?
Right.
Like nowhere in the text does it said, and the Lord made his skin like turtle shells. No.
Right.
No, it's just not there.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, but by the time you read through all of the story, he's Jesus. That's who he is. He's a story about Jesus, and that's it.
I believe that I've come across that idea in sort of more classical theology ideas, where they talk about shadows of Jesus in the Old Testament. Samson is just such a slam dunk that everybody looks at that, and
well, it's so profoundly thick with it. The story of Jesus so thick in the Bible.
Yeah.
Even if you want to say it's a history lesson and it happened chronologically and Jesus was one of the last events and then a couple folks died after that, but basically the story's over when Jesus dies and ascends into heaven. Even if you want to maintain that, you still have to admit things like the word Iesus, Jesus, Joshua, Yeshua are all the same word. Now
That's
go
right.
read the story of the prophet Joshua.
Right.
It's like right there. It's his whole life in one story.
That's awesome.
But they don't want to read it that way because they need it to be, chronological, historical, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's precisely the same word. But anyway.
Anyway, you just gave me my homework for the week. I'm definitely reading Joshua this week.
Joshua or Ezekiel, which one?
No, I'm going with Joshua.
Today?
I'm interested in what you said about Ezekiel, but it sort of landed, and I don't feel a lot of curiosity about that. It's more.
I find it repulsive, the whole book. Yeah. But truth can be like that. So
I feel like I need to know about it, and that I shouldn't avoid that knowledge. But I'm more excited to read stuff like Joshua. So,
right on.
And I don't think I've ever read that book in any context. So it'll be cool to approach a fresh book with a fresh.
It's really interesting when the prophet meets the angel. It's really interesting. I love it.
All right. No spoilers. I mean, I already know what's going to happen, but
yeah, you've already read it, haven't you?
I really haven't read Joshua in any context.
Oh, well, then I'll say no more.
But I know the story because right there. We both know the story. So
yeah, we both know. But there's different detail. There's more detail from a different point of view. So there's still more to be told.
Right on.
There's still more to be told.
I really will. I'll read that, and we'll talk about it next week, or
that would be
we'll talk
a joy,
about
really.
Else.
Yeah. Well, whatever you guys come up with, I'll try to answer you, no matter what you come up with, as long as that hopefully something to do with the Bible. But
fair enough.
Fair enough. As long as that's, Thanks so much, Mac.
Yeah,
thank you again, Steve, Moon Medi, Krishna. Who else showed up here? I want to. Oh yeah, Rebuke and Reprove was here, and Marty, of course.
Yeah, Jill and Marty both came.
Yeah, Skinny came by for a minute
Skinny
too.
Was there early,
Don't know if he's still there. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you so much to my co-hosts. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for dropping by and checking it out. And by the way, there's nothing illegal about you not really liking every show and just letting it play in the background while muted. You can do that, YouTube will care if you do that. They will call that, a big thumbs up from you, and it'll matter when it comes to suggesting the channel. But only do that if you think I'm saying something that matters. But then why do you show up here if you think I'm not saying things that matter? But anyway, thanks a lot, Mac. Appreciate you, man. Peace and respect to you all. Thank you very much. I want you all to know that I truly look forward to the day. We're all great friends. Till next time.